The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum to all the listeners and viewers. You are now tuned into Inspire FM and I'm your host Fahad Martin, presenting the Health and Fitness Show. I hope and pray that all of us are in their best of health and I hope and pray that all of us had a nice week so far. Yes, indeed, the holidays have been over and we are back to our daily life and routine. This program is broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM on 25th of April 2019 and casting its positive vibes to all our lovely people in Luton. Our show is around positive vibes going all across Luton and the surrounding areas of Luton like Dunstable, Harpeth and Bedford, and definitely going through our airwaves on our website and different podcasts. As we all know that we have discussed different issues throughout our shows and we always try to bring something new and something before the time. And as we all know that in 10 days time, approximately 10-11 days time, Ramadans will be starting. Alhamdulillah. Ramadan is starting and definitely Ramadan is one of the blessed months and as we have discussed extensively in our last week's show regarding how to prepare ourselves during the month of Ramadan, it is very, very vital that we should look after our health, well-being in terms of physical and spiritually. So, normally I start my show with a positive quote, but definitely today I thought instead of starting with a positive quote, let make our show positive as it is. So, and every single show I normally try to encourage people and listeners to get interacting in many different ways. So, further, without delaying anything further, let me introduce our topic of the day, because topic of the day is very, very unique in many different ways. It, as I said earlier, that we have already started shows for Ramadan, as we have mentioned last week, how it is necessary for all of us to look after our health and our well-being and how we can practice fasting in the best way we can without compromising our health or well-being, because sometimes when we do not look after our health properly, we cannot fast, and if we can't fast, we will be left out from these blessings which are appearing up in this blessed month of Ramadan. So the topic which we will be covering today is definitely, as I said earlier, that we are covering Ramadan. So we are talking about how and people who are diabetic, it's even harder for them to fast, especially in these days, because patients or people who are suffering from diabetes, they normally try to fast, and technically speaking they should not be fasting because they have things. So how we can do all those things safely and securely without compromising our health, and that will be our topic for today. So today's topic of the show is diabetes and healthier Ramadan. Yes, you have heard me correctly. We will be talking about diabetes and healthy Ramadan. And as always, I'm not the person who will be educating about anything. I will be just the host and the person who will be guiding and getting views from our guest who are not with us in the studio but joined us over the phone line on the airwaves. I can say he is a GP by trade, and a person who can explain about this more than me in many different ways, shape or form. So let me introduce our lovely doctor, and then ask him about how we can look after ourselves properly in the month of Ramadan. So joining us today is Dr Kashif. Assalamu alaikum, Dr Saab.
वालेकुम सलाम, क्या हाल चाल है? ठीक ठाक,
Alhamdulillah. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today. और मैंने introduction में ये बताना भूल गया था कि today's show will be a mixture of English and Urdu all together. So Dr. Saab, let's start with a quick round of introduction. So why don't you give us a quick update about yourself and the expertise in the field?
Okay, thank you for having me on the show. I will do the majority of show in English. लेकिन उर्दू में भी बात हो सकती है अगर required. I'm actually a GP based in Sutton in Surrey, and been working as a GP for about 16 years now. And as part of my general practice, I'm also head of organization. I'm head of health promotion for British Islamic Medical Association. And we run obviously seminars and workshops for the community about healthy activities, including cancer screening, fasting in Ramadan, and so on. So this is a topic which is of particular interest to me because of obviously Ramadan and diabetes.
Indeed. And Dr. Saab, आप जिस organization को ताल्लुक़ रखते हैं, आप you normally go to different mosque and मुख्तलिफ जगह पर जाके जो है वो इस्लाम के उसके बारे में ज़रूर बताते हैं. तो कैसा रहता है आपका experience in those जगहों पे, Dr. Kashif Aziz?
नहीं, माशाल्लाह, it's a good experience. हम लोगों ने we did a project on cancer screening in January, February, which we delivered to about 50 mosques nationally. Cancer screening, I mean, I know it's not the topic of today, like, and it's a huge problem and it's a huge issue as well in the Muslim community due to lack of awareness. So mashallah, that went down very well, and we had a good uptake from that and good feedback. And now inshallah we're doing the healthy Ramadan, so I've presented in a couple of mosques already, and nationally obviously we've been presenting, and we will continue presenting until probably the middle of May. So mashallah, we get achhi feedback hoti hai, people appreciate it, we get a chance for people to ask questions. And it's all about increasing the health awareness in our Muslim community.
Indeed. And I must say कि आप बहुत ही ज़्यादा नेकी का काम कर रहे हैं in many different ways, क्योंकि ये एक ऐसी चीज़ है कि लोगों को इतना ज़्यादा पता होता नहीं है, और वो फिर है ना डेफिनेटली वो फिर अपनी तरफ से कोशिश करते हैं कि वो कुछ रोज़ा रख लें, कुछ इबादत कर लें, और उसमें फिर उनकी तबीयत मज़ीद और ख़राब हो जाती है. चले हम अपना शो, as we have spoken earlier, let's start our show. So let me start our show on the note of Ramadan itself. Why do we fast? हम रोज़ा क्यों रखते हैं?
I mean, basically not teaching people to suck eggs. लेकिन essentially हम लोग fasting करते हैं because it's one of the pillars of our religion, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it's also in the Quran as well, in Surah Baqarah, ayah 183. O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it is prescribed for those before you, that you may become righteous. So it's one of the tenets of our mazhab, and आपकी बात बिल्कुल सही है कि even as small kids, we grow up in a family, everybody fasts, सब लोग fasting करते हैं, and in a way, it's a bit of an issue because दो लोग रोज़ा नहीं रख पाते, for whatever reason, उनको, they feel ostracized sometimes, they feel quite upset because it's so much part of our culture and religion, कि even though maybe they shouldn't be fasting medically, लोग रोज़ा रखते हैं because they feel so left out otherwise, because सब लोग रोज़ा रख रहे होते हैं.
Indeed. Or मुझे अभी I know because I've started preparing myself for the Ramzan mode, and I was fasting on and off on Mondays and Thursdays. And I remember my son and my nephew were saying that, if you're fasting today, we will be fasting with you today. and they are just what, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, and it sounds really, really nice. Alhamdulillah, it sounds like that. Yes, that is something which we should. And I remember my days. It is we used to do this all the time as well. वालिदैन को, दादी दादा को रोज़ा रखते हुए देख के हम लोग भी शौक में आ जाते थे कि ऐसा लगता है जैसे कल की बात है कि उनसे भी शौक में आ जाते थे कि हम शौक ज़ौक़ के साथ हम बोलते थे क्या हम भी रोज़ा रख सकते हैं. एंड यस, इट वाज क्वाइट नाइस. लेकिन साथ ही साथ जहाँ पर हम रोज़े की बात करते हैं वहीं पर वी ऑफ्टन टॉक अबाउट हेल्थ बेनिफिट एंड द रिस्क ऑफ फास्टिंग. सो जब हम बात करते हैं हेल्थ बेनिफिट की तो और रिस्क की जो बात करते हैं फास्टिंग के वक्त, तो उसको आप किस सेंस में देखते हैं, किस सिनेरियो में देखते हैं, एंड व्हाट एडवाइस एंड गाइडेंस यू कैन प्रोवाइड अस इन रिगार्ड्स ऑफ हेल्थ बेनिफिट फर्स्ट एंड देन द रिस्क.
ठीक है. सो आई मीन द हेल्थ बेनिफिट्स ऑफ फास्टिंग एक्चुअली आर देयर. Unfortunately, problem ये होती है कि because हम लोग रोजे, and we'll talk a little bit about it later on probably, because हम लोग सही तरीके से रोजा नहीं रखते in terms of what we eat. Some of these benefits do get negated. लेकिन if you work on a pure basis कि हम रोजा properly रख रहे हैं और properly इफ्तारी कर रहे हैं, then the benefits are obviously weight loss. There have been बहुत studies हो चुकी हैं, which I'm sure you probably aware of as well, कि अगर आप रोजे रखें regularly, then actually it helps you lose weight. And actually there's a diet in which you basically fast 2 days in a week. So the specific diet, you fast 2 days in a week, and in that they've shown that you can lose weight. आपका cholesterol, if you again fast properly और आप अपना food को change करें थोड़ा बहुत diet को, cholesterol कम हो सकता है. Blood pressure, you can improve your blood pressure as well. Again, if you reduce the amount of salt and you cut down on the amount of salt consumption, so भी फायदा पड़ता है. Sugar controlling is also very important. And the most important thing, when we'll talk a little bit about this, is controlling your bad habits and addictions. सबसे बड़ी problem, unfortunately, in our community is smoking. So again, this is something कि आप 14-15 घंटे आप रोजा रख रहे हैं and you're not going to be smoking. So there are significant benefits from controlling your addictions as well. For example, like smoking.
और जैसे कि अभी आपने बताया है कम्युनिटी और कम्युनिटी के बारे में एडवाइसेस, आई कंप्लीटली फॉरगॉट टू इंट्रोड्यूस आवर लिसनर्स एंड इन्वॉल्व आवर लिसनर्स. सो लिसनर्स, if you like to know more about the show and more about how to safely fast during the month of Ramadan, especially if you are diabetic, then please give us a call on 01582481822. I repeat, you can call us on 01582481822. You can send your questions via text messages or WhatsApp on 07779481822. I repeat, 07779481822. If you are viewing us on Facebook Live, you can also send your questions via Facebook Live. So you can send your questions over there, and we will try to accommodate your question as best as we can. क्योंकि हमारे साथ डॉक्टर साहब, डॉक्टर काशिफ अजीज़ हमारे साथ हैं टेलीफोन लाइन पे, एंड वो आप सबके सवाल जो आप रखेंगे हमारे सामने, इंशाल्लाह उनको जवाब देंगे, उनके बारे में बताएंगे, हमें गाइड करेंगे, एजुकेट करेंगे कि किस तरीके से हम हेल्थी रमज़ान गुजार सकते हैं. सो डॉक्टर साहब, जहाँ पर बात आती है फास्टिंग की रिस्क और बेनिफिट्स की, वहीं सबसे बड़ी जो सबसे बड़ा सवाल लोग उठाते हैं कि यार डायबिटिक हूँ, मुझे रोज़ा नहीं रखना चाहिए. इज़ दैट ट्रू? सो इफ दैट इज़ थिंग्स, हु आर दी मेडिकली एग्जेम्प्ट फ्रॉम फास्टिंग इन रमजान?
ठीक है. सो थोड़ा बहुत जस्ट वेरी क्विकली द रिस्क ऑफ फास्टिंग, एंड दे थिंक लाइक वेरी क्विकली डिहाइड्रेशन होती है, स्लीप, main problem sleep deprivation होती है, obviously, because as you can imagine, iftari Maghrib is about 8:30, Isha is about 9:40. By the time आप तरावी पढ़ के घर आते हैं 12 बज जाते हैं, and Fajr is about 3 o'clock in our area. So and then your sleep gets very interrupted. So that is definitely from that point of view. Now coming on to diabetics, that is one very particular category. Or the first thing I'm going to say is this. Obviously, this is my recommendation. You should always consult your own GP. Or secondly, when it comes to issues about fasting, you should always consult your own religious scholar. I'm not an Islamic scholar, though मैं आपको बताऊंगा, it's my opinion. but by any stretch of imagination, I'm not a religious scholar. So hamesha, when it comes to issues of health and religious interpretation, hamesha you need to speak to the right people about it. Like, and obviously I can give you some general guidance. Now, coming on to diabetes के आपके basically 3 category लोग होते हैं. And just because and whether you can fast or not will be determined कि आप किस category में आते हैं. So आपके पहले होता है, and we call it red, yellow and green categories. So the green categories होते हैं are those people who, in my opinion, are completely safe to fast. And these are people who are diabetic लेकिन only controlled on diet. तो वो कोई गोलियां नहीं लेते, बस थोड़ा बहुत अपनी डाइट से कंट्रोल करते हैं. या वो लोग जो डायबिटीज की वेल कंट्रोल्ड होती है और वो शायद एक गोलियां ले रहे होते हैं and they have one tablet and otherwise they are fit and well. So that is the category of diabetes who can fast, in my opinion, and कोई problem नहीं होनी चाहिए. Then you have the next category, which is, call it yellow category. Those people जिनकी sugar is reasonably well controlled, and then again it's up to interpretation of that. And then lastly you have what we call the red categories. और ये लोग हैं जिनको नहीं fast करना चाहिए, and this is obviously my opinion. And these are people who are type 1 diabetic, so those लोग insulin रहते हैं. In my opinion, anybody who's on insulin, because इससे आपकी blood sugar नीचे हो सकती है, you should not be fasting. People who have other problems associated with diabetes, like kidney की problem है आपको, renal failure है आपको, या आपको heart failure है, या आपको history of uncontrolled diabetes, sugar है, those kind of people should not be fasting at all when it comes to diabetes.
तो उनको क्यों नहीं करना चाहिए फास्ट, क्यों, उसकी वजह?
Well, there are numerous reasons. Number one, the लोग obviously insulin लेते हैं. Insulin by itself, I don't want to get obviously too technical because it probably will not suit everybody. लेकिन insulin का ये होता है जब इंजेक्शन लगाते हैं, इससे आपकी ब्लड शुगर ऊपर नीचे और नीचे भी हो सकती है. So अगर आप इंसुलिन लगाते हैं और आप खाना नहीं खाएंगे, then your blood sugar can drop, and if it drops below 3 to 3.4 or 4 millimolars of glucose, then you can start having symptoms of shaking, shivering, and start feeling unwell, and even potentially can go into a coma if it is untreated.
Wow.
So those लोग insulin लेते हैं उनको तो definitely problem होगी, because they'll have no sugar coming in for 16-17 hours a day and they will struggle. बाकी लोग जो इंसुलिन नहीं भी ले रहे होते but उनकी डायबिटीज अनकंट्रोल या उनको किडनी फेलियर है, then it can happen because आप dehydrated हो जाते हैं when you're fasting. Then because of that your renal function and your kidney function can also go downhill. So those people who are also having other issues with their diabetes should also not fast. Like, ultimately, if you're not sure, I always say you should always consult your own doctor about it.
हाँ, ये बात तो सही है. We should always consult our doctor, and when we talk about all these things, so it will automatically raise a question in our mind to fast or not to fast. And in your opinion, आपने बड़ा ज़बरदस्त, you have explained it very nicely in terms of the green and red and green, amber and red, that these are the people who can fast and can't fast. So in terms of the when it comes to red, amber and green route, is there any proper guidance available somewhere we can get, or in your opinion, to fast or not to fast? What is the question?
I think there's no specific guidance जो मैंने आपको बताया. That is basically something that we've been working on in our BMA project. I think ultimately you need to probably, if you fit into the green category, which is very low risk, and you're happy and आप diet ले रहे हैं, कोई issue नहीं आपको, then you probably do not need to seek any medical consultation, and you can basically just continue to fasting as it is. If you go into the higher category of yellow and red, then you should really see your own GP. तो मैं ये हमेशा कहता हूँ, as part of your diabetic program, if you are diabetic, before Ramadan, you should go see your GP. And most GPs obviously will give you advice and they'll give you specific guidance. And you have to take their word for it. आज के ज़माने में most of the GPs are well trained. Even the GPs who are not Muslim, उनको बहुत अंदाज़ा होता है कि क्या situation है, and they can guide you. And they'll give you the honest opinion. And then on top of that, you can take it forward.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of the definitely health risks for diabetes, especially in the fasting of Ramadan, you are just giving a quite good brief in terms of that. But what are your suggested actions for diabetic patients who want to fast in Ramadan?
Well, okay. So as I said, the first suggestion would be to basically, as I said, go to see your GP. and have a full medical consultation. And then obviously he will tell you about कि आपकी sugar control है या नहीं, and then he'll tell you about the potential risks. If you're on medication like insulin and you're on medication that can lower your blood sugar like sulfonylureas, for example, then he may say to you, okay, no, I don't recommend it. So I think you have to be very guided. I don't think it's a decision that you can take yourself, unless it's very obvious कि आप diet control करते हैं और कोई issue नहीं है. If you come into any of the other categories, you have to take this decision in consultation with your GP. And I always say कि आप महीने पहले, 1 month before Ramadan, so you still have a few weeks to do it. आप जाकर से मिल लें, and they'll be more than happy to accommodate you from that point of view.
तो यूजली क्या वो लोग नहीं भी बोल सकते हैं, नो भी कर सकते हैं, that you should not be fasting?
हाँ बिल्कुल. I think a lot of patients come and see me, and obviously with my knowledge मैं इनको categorically कहता हूँ, you're on insulin, you should not be fasting.
So what, do they take your advice or do they just do whatever they like to do?
Ultimately, as a doctor, 99% of whatever I do is tell patients what to do, and they take my advice. It's up to them if they don't. I give them the reason for it. I explain to them. I also explain that obviously I have a special interest in this because of the work I'm doing. And normally मान जाते हैं. The people who come and see me, I think the people who come and see you generally, they actually are quite clued up anyway. उनको अंदाजा है कि problem हो सकती है. They're not completely burying their head in the sand. तो उनको अंदाजा होता है कि ये potential problem है. और आप उनको बता दें sincerely with the right advice and the right backup, then most of the time they'll take your word for it. If they don't take your word for it, then all you can do is basically give them guidance, really.
Okay, good. Because sometimes that is in its own a very important thing to have, because sometimes people are so confused in so many conflicting information that to do or not to do. As I asked you earlier, it's something which people say is क्या करें नहीं करें, हाँ करें, फदिये दे दें नहीं दे दें, नहीं रोज़ा रख लें. तो उस चक्कर में जो है अक्सर बेशतर sometimes people do take drastic actions and so forth. So in terms of the insulin which you have mentioned, a general person from the medical point of view, when you're fasting, can we do blood glucose tests or can we take insulin while we are fasting?
Okay, now there are two aspects. Number one, as हमने already कहा, ideally you should not fast if you're on insulin. लेकिन अगर आप, if you're adamant and you want to fast and you have that decision you want to make, taking insulin and injecting yourself with insulin does not, in my opinion, invalidate your fast, because you're not getting any nutrition directly into your body. In addition to that, testing your sugar and even having a normal blood test. So if your GP says to you कि आप blood test कराने जाके, that also does not invalidate your fast, and most of the schools of thought, Islamic thought, are in agreement on that. So having a blood test, checking your sugar using a pinprick blood test, that does not invalidate your fast.
That's nice, because one of the things which sometimes people do get confused कि यार अभी मैं blood check करूँगा तो मेरा रोज़ा टूट जाएगा या होगा नहीं होगा and so forth. So yeah, that's good to know, because then it will give a person an extra confidence that okay, I should not do fasting, but if I'm doing fasting, yes, I can at least do it safely and securely. And I must say, wow, that is really good. Let's involve our listeners as well. So listeners, if you have any questions or queries regarding our topic tonight, you can always send us a question via text message or WhatsApp on our mobile number, which is 07779 481822. I repeat, 07779 481822. Or you can still call us old-fashioned way and speak to our lovely GP, Dr Kashif Aziz, with us, who are giving us lovely advice and very educative advice regarding diabetes and how we can fast safely and securely in the month of Ramadan. So, डॉक्टर साहब, जहाँ पर बात आती है ब्लड टेस्ट की एंड इंसुलिन की, वहीं पे उसी वक्त लोग जो है वो उसी सांस में या उसी बात पे सबसे पहला सवाल करते हैं, यार मैं तो डायबिटिक की मेडिसिन लेता हूँ बहुत सारी, मैं रोज़ा नहीं रख सकता, या मैं रोज़ा रख सकता हूँ तो अगर मैं रखूँगा तो मैं मेडिसिन तो नहीं ले सकूँगा. सो हाउ कैन अ पर्सन हु टेक मेडिकेशंस फास्ट?
ठीक है. सो आई थिंक अगेन इसमें ये डिपेंड करता है. आई कैन ओनली गिव यू जेनेरिक एडवाइस बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली सब लोग मुख्तलिफ दवाइयाँ लेते हैं, लेकिन Obviously, अगर आप रेगुलर दवाइयाँ ले रहे हैं and it's something, for example, आप ले रहे हैं डायबिटीज के लिए मेटफॉर्मिन ले रहे हैं, for example. Normally मेटफॉर्मिन आप दिन में सुबह शाम लेते हैं. You take it in morning and evening. Normally twice a day होता है. So in that situation, if you want to fast or आप, for example, metformin ले रहे हैं, then what you can do, you can take, if you take it twice a day, आप ये करें कि आप अपना, when you break your fast, you take your tablets then.
Sorry, Dr. Saab, आपको मुझे hold करना पड़ेगा क्योंकि unfortunately I did not realize the time has passed really quickly. We just have literally 30 seconds to go on a break, a very quick break. So, Dr. Saab, when we come back, we will continue this question. And my apologies कि आपको मैंने halfway through disturb करके रोक दिया. When we come back from the break, we will capture things from here and we will definitely continue this journey. So, stay tuned. We will be right back after these very short messages.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all our listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show. I'm your Fahad Martin, for the host for tonight's show, and I am pleased to announce that we are talking about diabetes and healthy Ramadan with our lovely guest, GP and the National Director for BIMA Health Promotions, Dr Kashif Aziz. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab.
Welcome, Saab. Tik tak.
Alhamdulillah. This program is broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM on 25th of April 2019 and casting its positive vibes to all our lovely people in Luton. Our positive vibes going all across the Luton and the surrounding areas of Luton like Dunstable, Harpenden, Bedford, and for the national and international listeners going through the Spire FM Facebook page, website, and Spotify, iTunes podcast, and different media outlets. So good evening and welcome back. So before we went on break, I was literally, to be honest, I lost the track of my time, and I thought that I have still few precious minutes remaining with me, and I asked Dr. Kashif Aziz a very common question, that how to manage medications during the month of Ramadan. So Dr. Kashif, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. So I think just starting off where we originally said, there's aspect of medication for diabetes and then there's general medication.
Yep.
So do आप diabetic होते हैं, obviously we talked about insulin. If you do want to fast and you do want to, and you're on insulin, then you go see your GP and he may be able to adjust the insulin dose potentially for you. लेकिन ऐसे मैंने पहले भी कहा, I think I would not advise that. लेकिन अगर आप insistent हैं, see your GP and he may be able to adjust the dose of insulin. अगर आप diabetic हैं and आप गोलियां ले रहे हैं, then the most common tablet is something like called metformin, and the vast majority of diabetics are on metformin. Or normally दिन में आप सुबह शाम लेते हैं, so you normally take it twice a day. Some people take it once a day. And the way I would recommend doing it is you take one lot of tablets when you break your fast, Maghrib time, about 8:30, 8:40, 9 o'clock jab bhi ho, and then you take your second lot of medication when you just before you have your sehri. So वही 3 o'clock, 3:30 जब भी फजर होगी, आप अपनी उस वक्त गोलियां ले लें. So divide up your tablets. It's a short space of time, लेकिन I think that's the only way you can do it. You take it with your main meals basically. अगर आप और गोलियां ले रहे हैं, if you're not diabetic and you're taking other medication, then you can, for example, a blood pressure ki goliyan le rahe hain and you're not diabetic, then it's very simple. Or cholesterol ki goliyan, you just take your medication in the evening when you have your food.
And what about the eye drops? Because some people take eye drops as well. Sorry, I was just literally thinking of that. So if anybody wants to have put some eye drops on, what they need to do?
Basically, eye drops, the vast majority of scholars, I mean, have already stated that taking eye drops does not invalidate your fast. And it's very important in conditions like glaucoma, which is again a big issue in the Muslim community. A lot of patients stop taking eye drops, and if you have a condition like glaucoma, then you can potentially lose your eyesight. So there is no reason that you cannot take your eye drops as normal when you're fasting. It does not go into your body, it does not provide any nutrition, and in the vast majority of school of thought, there'll be no issues with that. You can obviously consult with your own imam and your own scholar. Like, I'll be very surprised if he said to you that drops were not allowed, eye drops.
In terms of the आपने 2-3 दफ़ा काफ़ी दफ़ा पिछले सेशन में भी जिक्र किया यानी ब्रेक से पहले you have mentioned this quite few times regarding the pre-Ramzan medical assessment और आपने कहा था कि diabetics they should go to their GP and get themselves assessed because alhamdulillah there is still 10-11 days to go. So what is that assessment and what involved in that assessment?
Okay. So, I mean, in a very simplistic sense, obviously, you have, before you see your GP, and you talk about your overall well-being. So, आपकी overall health condition क्या है, कोई problems हैं आपको. Then you also talk about your blood sugar control, because again, as मैंने पहले भी कहा था, you should really only be fasting अगर आपकी blood sugar control sensible है and well controlled है. So that's something you can also discuss, and you can also discuss any other diabetic issues like आपको कोई kidney problem तो नहीं है, कोई heart की problem तो नहीं है. So that is what you discuss with your GP. उसके बाद basically then most GPs will decide and they will assess you. और उस basis वो कहेंगे whether, and we talked about this earlier on, whether you fit in the red group, the yellow group, or the green group. उस basis पे most GPs can tell you, look, you are safe to fast, or they may say to you, you should not be fasting at all, or some will say to you, 50-50 है, up to you, तुम्हारी मर्जी, if you want to try it, you can do it. In that scenario, you need to obviously look within yourself, you need to talk about adjusting your medicine, and maybe also consult a scholar. And then lastly, depending on your decision, if you say you want to fast, then most GPs should be able to adjust your medication. जैसे मैंने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले कहा था, if you're on metformin, they may say to ठीक है, you want to fast, you're on metformin, what you should do is take your tablets at this time and this time and see how you get on. So that should be the step, all 3 steps.
Okay. And before the break, in previous part of the show, you mentioned about the red, green, and amber kind of a patient categories who can fast. So, अगर आप उसको repeat कर देंगे, that will be really good for people who just joined us.
Yeah, no, not a problem at all. So yellow, okay, green is green to go as in green to fast. So these are people who basically didn't get diabetes well controlled. Either they're on diet or they are very well controlled. Maybe they're just taking metformin and they can fast. All they need to do is adjust their medication. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got the high-risk patients. These are type 1 diabetics who are insulin, and obviously blood sugar can become very low if you're fasting and dehydrated. Maybe those have other problems like kidney failure or heart failure associated with their diabetes. Yeah, recently in long hospital, though recently been in hospital because they have health issues. So those categories are red, and red means basically stop, do not fast. Moderate risk, sort of amber hota hai, is those who are maybe borderline or type 2 diabetics, who are maybe poorly controlled, it's okay they're controlled. And those are actually the most difficult patients because those are the ones who need to really sit down with their GP and come up with a proper action plan. A, do you want to fast? And B, agar aap roza rakhna chahte hain, to what do you have to do with your medication? So those are the so gray areas, or call it orange areas.
And the red areas?
Red areas, we talked about that. So type 1 diabetic, obviously, who are insulin, very, very poorly controlled diabetics, people who have been admitted to hospital, these people shouldn't fast. And the whole conversation should really be that, look, you should not be fasting. That's my recommendation to you. And then hopefully the matter should be closed. And again, मैंने बिल्कुल शुरू में कहा था, look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need us to, He does not want us to fall ill. He does not need our illness The whole concept of fasting in Ramzan is not कि आप बीमार हो जाएं, आप hospital में admission हो जाएं. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need us to be unwell. He does not require this from us. He requires us to only fast when it is safe for us and it does not compromise our health. And there are so many exceptions given to us. And in a way, I would even go as far as saying if you are actually going against his wishes. So if you're so unwell that you should not be fasting, maybe you are diabetic and you're poorly controlled, then by fasting actually you are actually going against his wishes because you're compromising your health and doing damage to your body.
Indeed. Acha, let's talk about the people who are in green and in amber. So, अगर वो अपना रोज़ा रखना चाहते हैं जो कि ग्रीन में है या एम्बर में है, तो आप क्या गाइड करेंगे उनको कि सहूर में क्या खाएं, अफ्तार में किस तरह क्या लें और क्या वेल बैलेंस्ड डाइट लें? क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ, as you know, being part of the subcontinent, whether you are from any part of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or any countries, most of us, what we do is that we start munching and we just don't realize how to stop. And our fasting start, our sahur, our roza opens with all these pakoras and samosas and all those things, and the sahur finishes with a big glass of lassi and all those extra things which is high in fat and sugar. So being for diabetics and for non-diabetics, sahur, what a person should eat?
As you said rightly, unfortunately, हम लोगों की diet is very, very fried and very, very oily, unfortunately. That's reality it. लेकिन I said to you right at the beginning, अगर आप सही तरीके से रोज़ा रखें with your sahur and your iftari, then you can actually lose weight, you can improve your cholesterol. So simple things like sahur, let's talk about sahur. Number one, try to do it as late as possible. So this is part of the sunnah as well, कि अपना sahur बिल्कुल late करें. Don't have your sahur 1 hour before fajr. So try to delay it as long as you can, because then it lasts you longer throughout the day. Make sure you have plenty of fluids. The most important thing, भूख से ज़्यादा dehydration problem होती है. And by far, most people get dehydrated. So अगर आप drink plenty of fluids in sahur, so drink plenty of water just before fajr. Have wholesome food. So try not to have a processed. Considering having things like porridge, have some sort of slow-releasing carbohydrates like brown bread, cereal, those kind of activities. Put a bit of fruit into your diet as well. So consider having some of these slow-releasing carbohydrates. And also increasing fiber. So we talked about cereal and that kind of stuff. Avoid at sahur fried food. Avoid at sahur really, really spicy food and that kind of stuff.
What about a portion of chopped or cut fruits? Not the fruit chart itself, जिसमें अच्छा खासा sugar syrup डला हुआ होता है और चाट मसाला डला हुआ होता है. What about just chopped foods?
Absolutely fine. They're very good for you and they're good for the body. But one problem, as you said yourself, we put masala on top of it. We try to make it more interesting. We try to make it more tasty. Like, unfortunately, by doing so, you take out some of the goodness from it. But absolutely fine. Fruit and vegetables, very good. And again, fruit chaat, if you have fruit chaat, but don't put too much spices into it, then it's a very good thing to have.
Let me involve our listeners as well. Listeners, if you have any questions or queries regarding our topic today, which is diabetes and healthy Ramadan, please give us a call on 01582 481822. I repeat, 01582 481822. You can send your questions via text messages on WhatsApp on 07779 481822. I repeat, 07779 481822. Now, Dr. Sahab, आपने सहूर के बारे में तो बता दिया. What about सहूर में water intake and milk intake and the liquid intake? What shall we do? Because one of the things that we always do is that जहाँ से रोज़ा बंद होने वाला होता है, we just literally have a bottle of water in. So is that the right way of doing it?
Yeah, ideally you should try to obviously space the amount of water you can drink. And really, my recommendation would be, from the moment you break your fast to sahur, provided you're not sleeping in between, try to obviously drink as much water as you can, but space it out. So don't drink a huge amount of water when you break your fast, and don't drink a huge amount of water just before your fast is going to commence. Try to space it out throughout the whole evening. You have 4 or 5 hours. I appreciate obviously beach map sewing maybe probably for a few hours, but do try to space it out throughout the whole day so that it doesn't overload the body as well.
So in terms of the water, we should space it out. So how much amount of water we should intake?
Again, there's no hard and fast rule. Basically, it's a simple answer: as much as you can take in comfortably. So, जो आप आराम से कर सकते हैं, whatever you can manage. I mean, typically throughout the normal day, you should be drinking at least 1 liter of water. So, on a normal day, we always recommend at least 1 liter of water or drink should be consumed. So, drinking 1 liter water in between iftar and sahur may be difficult. लेकिन आप जितना manage कर सकते हैं comfortably, then you should try to do that. But target should be around about 1 liter. If you can manage it comfortably.
Okay. I just got a question in front of me on my phone asking me about the pregnant ladies. And the question says, can a pregnant lady who have gestational diabetes fast? Now, I know the answer, but I wanted an expert opinion. So I thought, why not I put it in front of you? So what's your take on that?
To be honest, actually the question isn't that relevant from the point of view that if you're pregnant, you shouldn't be fasting anyway, to be honest. That's the first thing to say. So irrespective, agar aapko gestational diabetes hai, if you have gestational diabetes and you're pregnant, you should definitely not be fasting. But there's also a very strong school of thought, to which I also subscribe to, that agar aap pregnant hai, then you should not be fasting anyway because of the stress it'll put on. Pregnancy obviously it's not a disease, but it is something that puts a lot of strain on the body. So because you're having to basically feed 2 people. So it's very important not just for your own well-being for the pregnant mother, but also for the fetus as well, that enough nutrition gets inside the body. So there's exemption in Islam that if you're pregnant, and even if you're breastfeeding as well, the same thing applies there, that you can actually do not have to fast. You are exempt from fasting on that basis. But again, I will add here that there are some schools of thought that don't give you that exemption. I'm talking about what the schools of thought which I am ascribed to. Again, if you're not sure about that, you should consult your own scholar. But if you are diabetic and you're pregnant, then definitely you shouldn't be fasting.
Indeed. And last week, जब मेरे साथ Dr. Shanaz Akbar, she's the gynecologist from Luton Dunstable Hospital, she also emphasized on the same thing. कि एक तो आप pregnant है, you should not fast at all. But if you are trying to fast, then you should not be fasting if you are in your first or the third trimester. Second, it might be, but it's better not to fast because it will put unnecessary strain to not just to your health, but to the health of the baby who you're carrying. But in the people who can fast, let's talk about them. जैसे अफ्तार की बात आती है तो अफ्तार में जो है बंदों के मुंह में पानी आ जाता है. मेरे मुंह में तो अभी से पानी आ रहा है सोच के हाय समोसे हाय पकोड़े. So in terms of everybody else, what do you recommend one should take in the time of iftar while you're diabetic and when you're not diabetic?
हाँ बिल्कुल. I mean मुझे भी पकोड़े सोच के मेरे भी मुंह obviously ruah afza and पकोड़े
पानी आ जाता सीधा. Exactly.
Pani, and when we grew up, ruah afza was something we grew up, and Ramzan isn't Ramzan without pakore and ruah afza.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, it's not really the best way for you. So, I mean, obviously, मैं ये कहता हूँ moderation में सब कुछ चलता है. So I'm not going to say to you कि आप पकोड़े नहीं खाएं, ruah afza नहीं पिएं. I'm not going to say that to you. But I think वही बात है, थोड़ा बहुत इसमें balance होनी चाहिए, and it should not be every day. लेकिन I think what's important is that obviously हमारे सुन्नत में वैसे ही है, you should open the fast with a date. And we normally recommend that because the date is full of sugar, it is quite a healthy option. You should normally have some milk with it. So we suggest you have a little bit of milk with it, with a date, and then maybe you break and have do your Maghrib namaz. Or uske baad, then you have a diet. So then you have a light, balanced meal. So again, avoid anything fried, avoid anything really, really spicy. Because if you imagine your stomach has been empty for 15 hours. So straight away आप कुछ fried डाल देंगे या कोई मिर्ची वाली चीजें डाल देंगे, then that will only cause irritation to the stomach. So try to have a light, healthy, balanced meal. Have more protein in it. Have high fiber, and we talked about that. Maybe lentils are good, dal is good, porridge is good, rice is good as well in moderation. And then obviously, as I said before, make sure you drink plenty of water. So as part of obviously immediately after breaking your fast, make sure you drink as much water as you can.
Okay. So in terms of the food itself, now you have mentioned about the healthier options. So what can be the healthier options?
Okay, so let me give you a few examples. I mean, again, these are the suggestions. Okay, so I mean, as may I take it as it is really. So, if you're from a South Asian, if you're basically Asian, South Asian, things like obviously grilled chicken, grilled lamb would be good. Dal, curry would be good. Whole meal roti and rice would be good. And if you do want to obviously have samosas, make sure that they are fried in minimal amount of oil. If you are, for example, of Middle Eastern, then maybe falafel, salad, moussaka, yogurt, soup, those kind of things are also good options to have. I think the most important thing is just try to have as much fiber as you can in your diet. Potatoes are good as well. And take it from there, really.
Nice. Or for our listeners, if they want, they can have a booklet called Ramadan and Type 2 Diabetes, the physical guide, which will be available in Inspire FM or from our studio. So you can come and collect it from tomorrow onwards. I will definitely want to go through this guide myself. But yeah, it is readily available for all our listeners and viewers from the studio or in Big Iftar as well, or the other events which we Inspire will be conducting. And on that note, I must say, wow, the time has passed really, really quickly. We just have 5 minutes remaining to end our show. So whenever we have less time remaining, I normally ask my guests to do a quick round of coverage of what we have talked about. Like, I still have few questions like oral hygiene advice. What do you reckon about the oral hygiene, sir?
Okay, so again, oral hygiene, it's something which obviously is relevant. So you should obviously basically brush and floss your teeth ideally twice a day. So we normally recommend you brush your teeth before you go to bed at night and immediately after you do sahur. So immediately you can actually brush your teeth. Again, most schools of thought will allow you to brush your teeth after Rosa begins. If you do, obviously, you can use a miswak, you can use mouthwash as well, but only outside fasting hours. Mouthwash and these gargling moisture, they will invalidate your fast. So if you use something like a mouthwash and you use it during the Ramadan time, then it will invalidate your fast. But you can use it obviously in between. And obviously avoid fizzy or acidic drinks and make sure you can rinse your mouth with water in between. So beach may be up, obviously you can rinse your mouth with water as long as you don't swallow it.
So in terms of the other than the oral hygiene, what will be your suggested way, especially in these? So you have talked about the food times in terms of the iftar. What about the sahur? What the best thing to have in sahur? In terms of food, because people sometimes do try to have heavy food, or instead of having just porridge or cereals, they like to go for a proper dal, roti, and salan and fried stuff as well. So what can they have if they are not willing to go for things like porridge or cereals?
I think if you don't want porridge and cereal, then I would suggest have a bit more protein with your sahur. So have something like chicken, grilled chicken is fine, fish is fine, even grilled lamb and everything is fine. So try to have it more grilled than fried. You can have a little bit of carbohydrates. Like agar chawal khana hai, try to make sure it's brown rice rather than white rice, so that it lasts you longer throughout the whole body. So maybe something simple like brown rice with a bit of chicken thrown in there would be a good compromise to have.
Okay, and what about the coffee or tea? Because बगैर उसके तो हमारा गुजारा नहीं होता. चाय बगैर चाय या कॉफ़ी के बगैर गुजारा ही नहीं होता है सहरी बंद करते वक्त या खोलते वक्त. So what do you recommend in those?
I think what I would always say, I mean, tea and coffee, I know people drink 6 or 7 cups of tea and sugar. So उनके लिए मुश्किल होता है, and अक्सर that's the thing they miss the most. Try to reduce your coffee and tea intake before Ramzan. तो अभी भी थोड़ा बहुत time है. We've got almost 7 or 8, 9 days. I think we've got 10 days actually. So you can actually just reduce the amount of sugar. If you're having 3 or 4 cups of tea, try to come down to 1 or 2. So try to bring it down gradually. ताकि Ramzan में आपको इतना लगा नहीं. And then obviously, if you need to have a cup of tea after you break your fast, you need to have a cup of tea. You can't do anything about it. You can always just try to reduce as much as you can before Ramzan so you don't feel it so much.
And what about your guidance regarding physical activities and people who want to do exercise still while fasting, what they should do, especially the diabetic ones?
Okay. Again, exercise, there are 2 aspects of exercise. Number 1, we would not advocate doing any exercise after you break your fast. So obviously Maghrib 8:30, 8:40 OTA, you should not exercise after breaking your fast, because if you imagine all the blood supply, the majority of the blood supply when you break your fast will go to your stomach because you're digesting food. That will mean that if you start exercising, you will get cramps and you can do damage to yourself. With regards to exercise when you're fasting, Again, I would not recommend exercising 1 or 2 hours before you break your fast, because this is where your blood sugar is going to be at the lowest. If you want to exercise, you can do some moderate exercise, but try to do it around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Try to do it lunchtime when your sugar levels, relatively speaking, are higher.
Okay. And what is the quick take-home message from you regarding diabetics? Because we just have 1 minute left.
I think there are two messages. Number one, obviously, it is not compulsory to fast. If you only fast if you are medically safe, and you should consult your GP about it. And if you fall into the right categories, you can fast, but otherwise you shouldn't. And number two, I always like to put this in there. Apart from diabetes, smoking is one of the biggest problems in the Muslim community. So I always say that if you can stop fasting for 15 hours in Ramadan, then you should stop fasting for the rest of your life. So use this opportunity to control one of the biggest health issues it is, which is like smoking. So use it as a positive. If you can gain something out of Ramadan, it should be the fact that you will stop smoking. Plus, obviously, the benefit you will get from a religious point of view.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Kashif Aziz, for joining us via telephone line and giving us the guidance regarding healthier Ramadan, diabetes and healthier Ramadan, and how diabetics can fast, and why can they not fast or not allowed to fast, and so forth. And I must say thank you so much for explaining us all these things, because sometimes people know about this and cannot do that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Jazakallah, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you so much.
And health and safe Ramadan to everybody.
Ameen, summa ameen. And that's all for our show tonight, guys. Inshallah, we will see each other next week with another show. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.